What's up, my fellow small business supporters? It's Savvy. Welcome back to Savvy Writes Books. Today, I am going into part 2 of my review of the book Ponzinomics. Last week on my channel, I talked a lot about the book itself, the content. I talked about the ways that it exposed some of the history of MLMs and how deeply embedded it is into our political structures within the US. However, today I am going to be having part 2 of this video, which is a book discussion I'm having with my friend Taylor from the channel The Antibot. I will link her channel in the description below. Please don't forget to subscribe to her as well. She and I are going to be talking about our thoughts on the book and having more of a casual book discussion and analyzing different things that jumped out at us and having a discussion about how we think the information in this book might influence our own approaches to taking down MLMs going forward. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Remember, I do want to have a big group book discussion of this on my channel at some point. So if anyone is interested, please comment below and we'll try to organize something. I think that'll be really fun. But let's get right into our discussion.
Hit you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.
So this book is called Ponzinomics. It is by Robert Fitzpatrick. He is a wonderful dude. A wonderful dude. Let's just read his bio real quick. Robert Fitzpatrick is arguably the one person to comprehensively address this global phenomenon of multi-level marketing. His understanding of occultic pseudo-business disguised as sales and distribution is grounded in 2 decades as a channel management consultant advising clients such as DuPont, Fujifilm, and HP on strategies and relations with distributors in 4 industries in the USA, Canada, Mexico, Europe, and Japan. A close encounter with a pyramid scheme that swept the USA launched his 20-year immersive study and civic engagement. In years following his first book, False Prophets, he was retained as an expert in more than 33 court cases against pyramid schemes. Dozens of Wall Street analysts engage his professional consultation. He maintains pyramidschemealert.org, one of the most visited consumer sites on pyramid schemes. So basically, this guy has just been studying pyramid schemes for decades and researching them and is putting this information together into a wonderful book for us called Ponzinomics. What were your, and like, what just like jumped out at you about this book? What were your thoughts? What should we talk about?
Man, well, first of all, like, this book was just awesome. Like, I learned so much from it. I think the main thing that I really took from it is how much, like, intermingling the MLM industry has had with our government. And, like, I knew that there was a lot of paying people off in the government, but I didn't realize, like, how deep it went. I wrote down a bunch of notes of different things. Let me
the problem I had with this book, which is not a bad thing, this is not a criticism of the book. The problem I had when reading this book is that all the information in it is so good. Like, every page has like a million facts that I need to know on it. So I'm like trying to highlight. I'm like, every page is like, I'm very overexposed, but every page is like that.
Yeah, like, I highlighted so much.
Highlighted, and every page is marked, and so I'm like, how am I going to know which pages to come back to when all of them are pages I have to come back to?
I mean, basically, like, what I really took from it was that pretty much every administration since Reagan has been paid off or influenced in some way by the MLM industry. And it's on both sides, whether it's Republican or Democrat, both have been influenced. Yeah. I think the MLM industry has paid off more Republicans just because usually Republicans are more for deregulation of industries, which would be in the interest of MLM companies, versus Democrats tend to want more regulation. But with Democrat administrations, it's pretty much like they've just ignored the MLM industry and haven't made any moves to prosecute any companies for being pyramid schemes. They've kind of just ignored it. So I wrote down that Bush, during his administration, he appointed Timothy Muriel as the FTC chairman. So the dude that is in charge of the Federal Trade Commission. And that guy used to be a lawyer he used to be a lawyer, and his largest client was Amway. And I was like, how is that not a conflict of interest? You're literally appointing someone as a chairman who used to represent MLM companies. So obviously he's not going to do anything. He's not going to prosecute or go after MLM companies, you know?
That's so like right at the beginning of the book, just like on page 9 right here, it says, it was revealed that a lead negotiator working for Herbalife, John Leibowitz, was the immediate past chairman of the FTC appointed by President Barack Obama. Since leaving his public FTC post, Leibowitz has been advising Herbalife in connection with its $200 million settlement with the FTC relating to allegations that it engaged in unfair and deceptive acts and practices. So it's like, okay, dude. The guy Obama had appointed as the chairman of the FTC is working for Herbalife. Like, yeah, and so it's like they're all connected. And that's why there's this thing with like, and this is going to get me canceled, but like the whole like Republicans and Democrats are so different. Like, no, they're all being paid off by corporations. And I don't mean individual voters. Like, if you are a voter registered with a party, like, I'm not accusing you of being paid off by a corporation. I'm talking about the politicians, like the presidents, their immediate cabinets, like all of that. It is disgusting. So it's like, how do we ever expect any progress to get made on anything in this world when all of these people are tied directly to shady companies and like presidents are appointing people that, like, we had the obvious example with like Trump appointing Betsy DeVos to Secretary of Education, and, you know, the DeVos family is what created Amway. So it's like, I mean, Amway's connected to so much, and it's just like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But like, I just cannot, like, people, I think, really need to understand how little power the average person has when there is such a huge machine of companies and politicians tied together, and it is influencing the MLM world, the scams, the cults. It's like, I feel like I sound like I need to put on a tinfoil hat when I'm yelling this, that like I sound like I'm making crazy conspiracy theories, but like it's documented.
Yeah, like, yeah, we can prove these things. Yes. We can show these things. Yeah, that's why I don't think that corporations should be able to fund political campaigns at all, because like, obviously that's opening it up to be biased and for politicians to appoint certain people because they've been paid off, and that's not in the interest of the public. And initially when I first started getting into the anti-MLM community, I was really like, oh, you know, MLM has so many ties to the Republican to Republicans. But actually, like, it's on both sides. Like Kamala Harris, I wrote down, there was an injunction against Herbalife in not too long ago. I want to say like 2016, 2017 or something. No, actually, the injunction has been around since the 80s. And Kamala Harris never enforced the injunction because one of her biggest contributors was her husband's law firm that represented Herbalife.
Yeah,
so
dude,
it's like
I feel
so
I
much
really
bias.
That, I mean, I will say as a disclaimer, I really do love that we have a female vice president, and I think that that's fantastic, and I'm going to celebrate that for what it is. However, I am going to criticize Kamala Harris all day long. I don't know, and it's not just her. So like, anyone who thinks I'm just hating on her, literally, I have yet to find a politician that I don't think is just completely shady individual. If you know of one, let me know, but I'll probably become disillusioned quickly.
Yeah, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Because it makes it also feel like we have no power to change that.
Yeah, exactly. It all makes, like, all of this is just a sign of how powerless everything is. Like, that's how I felt during the 2020 election. I felt absolutely powerless to make any real change in the world. And, like, you just feel that way constantly because it's like you vote in primaries and half the time you feel like your vote in the primary didn't matter because half the time it's like whoever gets the most media attention is going to be the candidate regardless, and whoever gets the most media attention is whoever's drawing in the most ad revenue based on the sponsors of the media companies. So you get this whole like thing where it's like none of us really had a choice on any of this to begin with. And when we read this book, it just becomes like, it's even more concrete. Like, I say this stuff all day and I'm like, I know I just sound like I'm crazy and ranting, but like when you read this book, you've got like documented examples of how this has happened and how these companies have been able to rise to the powers that they have been to. It's like, damn, like I could go on all day about how I feel like a powerless individual in this world, especially because like, you know, we get the word out there on YouTube, like who knows? Maybe YouTube is going to at some point suppress our content. Like, we don't own YouTube. Google owns YouTube, and Google is a big tech company that owns a lot of what's out there. And it's like, it's really scary. That's why I also love that this book was self-published. Although I do recognize the printing, it was self-published by KDP. Based on the printing style, I could be wrong, but based on my experiences with book printing, I'm pretty sure it was published by KDP, which means that that's an Amazon-owned company. So this, but you can publish through KDP and not be exclusive to Amazon. So it's entirely possible that this book is not Amazon exclusive. And I like to be fair, Savvy Business Owner is Amazon exclusive. So like, I play into that just as much as everybody because Amazon is lowballing to drive out their competition and all that shit. But I will say that I'm glad that this book, we got a self-published book that doesn't have outside publisher corporate influence in it trying to push anything down. Like, you can do literally anything on Amazon. But anyway, I'm just ranting about big corporations now.
Well, and I think that your whole point of like feeling hopeless, Robert, even in the book, he ends the book with being like, is there much hope for things to change? Not really. Does that mean that we should stop doing what we're doing? No. And he compares it to the tobacco industry where, the government was pushing cigarettes and everyone thought it was fine up until the day everyone realized it wasn't fine. So, maybe one day people will finally like the consensus regarding the MLM industry will finally be to the point where everyone's like, yeah, MLMs are pretty much horrible. And then things will change. So, I mean, it's hopeless, but also just because it seems hopeless right now doesn't mean that we should stop.
Yeah. And I think there was a really great connection here. I'm trying to find the page. I highlighted on every page, guys, so this is a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem I had, was that like there's so much information.
So much information. I'm going to have to read this a second time.
Same.
Without highlighting anything. Because there was this part that I thought it was also really beautifully written. Because for the most part, this book isn't like very flowery writing. It's very just factual. He's basically just stating the facts to you outright, which is fine because this book has a lot. Okay, well, that was the part about pyramids. But there was a part about the tobacco industry and how how it was like the government forced cigarette companies to place warnings on the cigarette ads, but all they still saw was like the ad itself, because you walk away with an impression rather than remembering a fact. Right. And that MLMs use the same tactic. Oh God, where's that part? Well, maybe I can't find it.
But yeah, that is similar to MLMs, like, because now they have to, put that little disclaimer, and they, aren't allowed to make any income claims. But just because there's that fine print isn't going to deter people away from joining MLMs, because you're right, like the impression they get matters more than the little fine print that they're legally required to have.
Yeah, there was a whole section. Oh, here it was. Well, this was not about the cigarettes, but this was about the pyramids. I love this section where it was like, he talks about, like, because people, they talk about pyramid schemes, and then there are actual physical pyramids in, like, Egypt. But I never really thought, I always just was like, oh, they're the same shape, that's all. But, like, no, dude, this comparison he drew was actually really beautiful, where it was like, what is a genuine mystery is how exactly the pyramids were viewed by the unnamed masses who built and paid for them. How were so many mobilized? How were the funds obtained for projects that aggrandized so few at the expense of so many? Archaeologists say the public was led to believe the pyramids were monuments to sacred beliefs that working on them would lead to divine rewards. And I was like, whoa! Whoa! Like, I never realized that you could draw so many comparisons between pyramids and pyramid schemes other than the shape. Like, I just like, dude, like, that was brilliant, dude.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really good information in this book. I think everyone needs to read it.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I thought that was really, really interesting, and he kind of mentions this in the book, is that up until like the 1979 Amway court case, a lot of people in government and lawmakers viewed pyramid schemes for what they were. But then when the whole Amway case went down, then that started to shift where this idea came about that there were illegal pyramid schemes and there are legal pyramid schemes. And that whole idea didn't exist until then. And basically that happened because Amway said in their court hearing that they have, like, their business is built on retail sales. Mm-hmm. But then the judge in the case never looked into whether or not Amway actually does have retail sales. They just like took their word for it.
Right.
And there hasn't been any investigation really into whether or not the MLM industry really has retail sales since then. They just kind of take these companies' words for it, which is just like blows my mind that there's no one's actually looked into the data around that. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's here on page 152. It says, after the FTC endorsement of Judge Timoney's ruling, he said there developed a confounding legal standard where an unprovable premise that Amway rules prevented deception and consumer harm supported the myth that there are legal MLM companies on the one hand and evil pyramids on the other. And I think that's like, I wrote like a note there that said like, this is the origin of when people say it's not a pyramid scheme, because everyone knows pyramid schemes are bad. And they're like, my company is one of the ones that's not bad. Mine is one of the ones that's operating legally because there are two types of this company. It's like, if they're not, they're all exploitative in this way. The structure itself is inherently exploitative, but because of like that ruling, that it kind of divided it into like, okay, well, if your company is based on retail sales, then it's one of the ethical and legal ones. And it's like,
but they never actually looked into whether or not they have retail sales.
They just took their word for it. Yeah.
Like, that just seems crazy to me. I don't know how that happened. I mean, I know how that happened. I mean, because of lobbying and paying people off. But the fact that no one's been like, hey, maybe we shouldn't take people's word for it. Or there's no requirement for MLMs to reveal how much real retail selling they have. Because they count, like, anything that distributors buy along with like sales to outside customers. They combine those together and say that it's all retail sales. Meanwhile, like, sales to actual outside customers is only like, I don't know what the statistic is, but it's only a small percentage of what they count as retail sales.
Right, because it's like, and I think he did a really good job in the whole section about doublespeak, kind of talking about how that is intentionally deceptive, because it's like, if you change the meaning of what you imply when you say something, you can lie without really lying, because you didn't. When we said retail, we meant transactions to wholesalers. So retail could be a sale to anybody. So we can say we're based on retail sales, but if the consultants are buying these and we call it retail, then it's retail sales. Yeah. Like, that's, or like recruiters are called distributors. So if you distributor means you distribute a product, but we call our recruiters distributors. Therefore, our company is mostly distributors. And it's like, Amway had defined what those words meant within the context of their company and made it in a way so that, like, it looked like they were based on sales to the end customer who would then not go on to resell it. But in reality, there was no proof of that.
Yeah. I mean, they're just like redefining terms to be in their favor, basically.
Yeah. Recruiting rewards became performance bonuses and sales commissions. Paying to join the recruiting chain was disguised as signing a sales contract and receiving a sales kit. So it's like, they promote it and show it as something else, and then as a result, it's like, if nobody actually looks into it.
Yeah. And that whole like retail versus like wholesale thing, I wrote down that Doug DeVos, who I think is like the son of the dude that founded Amway, he claimed that there's no difference between retail and wholesale to a reporter. And I thought this was interesting because it sounds almost verbatim to what Tim Sales said to us once. And like that whole comment section war. I don't know if you remember this comment or not, but he was talking about how, well, it is retail because it's wholesale and it's technically the same thing. And I was like, that sounds really, really similar to what this guy, Doug DeVos, said to a reporter, like almost verbatim what he said. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting just because like Tim Sales accuses us of just repeating stuff.
It's like, you're repeating the Amway,
like you're repeating
from the Amway family, dude. Like,
yeah. And like, I don't think that repeating stuff is bad.
No,
like, I don't think that makes it so something's not true, but I just thought it was interesting because of the fact that he accused us of that. And I'm like, well, I can point out like places where you've done the same thing. So
right. And it's like repeating stuff is really just spreading the information.
Yeah.
We repeat John M. Taylor's research because it mathematically holds up. Robert Fitzpatrick references John M. Taylor's research because it holds up and proves things like the numbers aren't going to lie to you.
Yeah, like the fact that someone's repeating something doesn't mean it's false. And you have to actually examine what it is that they're repeating.
One section I didn't fully understand, and I'm not sure if it's because I was reading it late at night, so my brain was a little bit off. I was interested in the section where he talked about how people manipulate statistics. But I wasn't really, like, it wasn't, the math was not resonating in my brain about how the statistics were manipulated.
Honestly, I think that I might have been confused on that part too.
Okay, I'm glad it's not just me, because he talked about there was a whole section, I think it was like $2,400. Oh yeah, here it is. It's page 171. And it was about how, or like, yeah, it starts on page 169. It's the lie with statistics section. And I thought this section was really important, and I was hoping, like, I thought it was going to, maybe it did break down how the statistics were wrong and I just didn't get it. I was having a little trouble with this section though, because it was talking all about, right, like how MLMs falsely report the statistics of how much people make in their company. And like, I know that we broke down that a little bit in our video with Tim Sales, where we talked about like average versus median, and Robert Fitzpatrick does talk about average versus median a bunch of times and things like that. And that's important, but how a bunch of MLMs were, surveys were published by the Direct Selling Association that seemed to show most people in MLMs were making modest to extraordinary income. Research produced data that the median average income, half make more, half make less, of all direct sellers was more than $2,400 a year. And then he says later that was actually just an inaccurate number, that it was actually like negative something.
Yeah, I actually did not. This is a section I did not highlight that much. So I'm wondering if it's because I didn't understand.
Yeah, I was highlighting things because like I wanted to remember them and come back to them, but I didn't know maybe you understood it and my brain was just too tired last night to understand it. But maybe they're just, maybe we need to have more discussion on this section or something.
Yeah, I feel like I might need to reread this section. I did highlight where, I'm not sure which MLM company he's referring to here. Maybe it's just the MLM industry as a whole, but
yeah,
he's talking about like they claim that, you know what? Never mind. I'm confused again. Ignore me. I'm confused.
Oh,
I need to reread this.
Okay, so I think it's saying that like, they say the median income is $2,400 a year, and then later in the chapter it says that this is based on estimated retail, and I think that they based it on estimated retail based on how much stock they bought, like how much like monthly PPV and all of that. Because it says the DSA website informed consumers and regulators that 13 million of a total 18.6 million direct sellers bought products at wholesale that were never resold. So I think it could be they could have been manipulating it based on unsold inventory, but I am not positive, so I don't want to say that if that's not true. Robert Fitzpatrick, please do an interview with us, because I desperately want to understand this chapter, and I don't know if my brain is just not good enough to understand this chapter.
I think a point that I think that maybe I understand from this chapter is apparently the DSA claimed that they had 34.9 billion in retail sales for a year period, I'm assuming. And then they also said that they had a certain amount of it says 1 million of the 6.2 million distributors work full time. And then Robert's saying, well, if you're saying full time, so like let's assume a full time income is about $40,000 a year. That seems kind of like modest, but probably not. People can't live on $40,000 per year. Let's be real. But like, let's assume that. Then if you were to multiply that number by the amount of by the 6.2 million people they claim work full time, then that would be $40 billion in income. But the DSA reported that total annual retail sales in 2018 were just 35.4 billion. So it's like their numbers aren't adding up. I don't know if that made sense.
No, I think that section. I think I highlighted a ton. I highlighted a ton in that section because it was like. It was also that it was before all expenses on top of that. So it's like mathematically impossible that someone was making a full-time income in pure profit, like in net profit, if the number is exceeding the number of total sales net revenue.
Yeah.
You would have to subtract expenses on top of that. Like that section made perfect sense. And I was like, yep, somebody lied.
Yeah, it's like the numbers that the DSA is giving are not accurate because they're conflicting. It doesn't make sense.
I also thought it was interesting how, like, you see a lot of, and I liked how this same section delved into the fact that you see a lot of, like, income disclosure statements that'll show that nobody's making money, and then the company will come back and say, like, okay, but the reason is that 99% of people in our company are making no money because they're not actually selling the product. They just signed up as customers to get the bonus. So, and they'll, like, say that, which, first of all, there's no documentation of that. So
yeah.
no
How
one
do you
knows
prove that?
You can't prove that because you have to you sign up to be a preferred customer in the same way you would sign up to be a reseller. So you can't, like, they intentionally make it so you can't tell the difference, and then they can just claim that. And then it said, like, I loved this whole section. Recently, the DSA tried a new subterfuge. The absence of retail customers, a red flag for pyramid schemes, had been getting attention in the media and was highlighted during the controversies over Herbalife. In 2018, the DSA announced it used a new method of counting and determined that actually only 6.2 million people in America were direct sellers, 12 million others who had been counted in the total the year before, and nearly that many in earlier years were actually customers, though they had signed contracts as resellers. Finally, multi-level marketing had found people who buy products besides the salespeople themselves. It was the same people as before, but now they had a new name, customer.
They redefined it.
It's just the doublespeak thing, yeah? And I love the doublespeak section because that's, like, so indicative of cult shit that, like, you are taught to have a word mean something slightly different than what you expected it meant before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, oh, these people are the customers. And I think they do that now too, where it's like, oh, if you don't meet your monthly quota, you're technically a customer. But it's just so they can classify you that way, so that then when it
doesn't look like a pyramid
nobody's
scheme.
making money, yeah, exactly. Then they could be like, oh, it's just the customers that don't make money because they're not employees anyway, they're customers.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you prove the people that just signed up because they want a discount or whatever from the people who are actively trying to work a business? Like, how can you prove someone's motivations behind why they joined an MLM? You can't
because there's no way. Like, if it would be a lot more ethical if, like, when you sign up, it was like you had to choose, like, I'm signing up to be a distributor versus I'm signing up to be a customer and get a discount by signing up for a yearly subscription or whatever. Those would have to be two separate options. And even if the discount was the same amount of money, it would have to be two separate options.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you really can't tell. And I believe that there are probably some people who sign up just to get the discount. I'm sure they exist in the world. But I do not think it's the majority. Doesn't seem realistic with how many people come out about these terrible stories.
And if it was a majority, then why wouldn't MLM companies make a way so people can just sign up for discounts? Like, why would they only offer like a distributor type of thing. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
I think the most important thing in this book was actually in a footnote, which is like, is this footnote right here. It was right at the beginning on page 4 where like, you know, because everyone talks about 99% of people don't make money in MLMs. And that's an important statistic to have, but it's actually more. And basically this footnote proves that it's actually more because he's talking about, so it says the 99% loss rate is based on examinations of MLM published income disclosures, data from the MLMs themselves. I produced a study of 11 representative MLMs in 2008 that documented this rate of loss. It has also been revealed in state and federal prosecutions in the USA and the UK and in class action cases. Other researchers have produced the same numbers. Yet, even the figure of 99% does not capture the financially lethal reality. MLM disclosures are for 1-year timeframes, a mere snapshot of an ongoing scam. 50 to 80% of MLM adherents quit and are replaced each year. The winners tend to be the same individuals positioned at the top year after year. The losers comprise a constantly churning base of new failures yearly. When the cumulative losers are included, the number of actual individuals who ever earned a profit as a percent of all who were ever enrolled drops to a tiny percent of 1% of virtual zero. So it's like, that makes a lot of sense because the people at the bottom are a constant turnover. Most people are quitting within the first year because of how they're not making money. And, you know, even if the income disclosures, you can base it on that, but the income disclosures don't tell you how many of the same people returned from last year versus how many people are new this year. So keeping in mind that it's the 50 to 80% of people on the bottom leave and rotate out every year. So it's the same people at the top. But it's even more than 99% of people. It's like almost 100% of people because almost everyone who's ever been in it has left and lost money.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because like the MLM companies' income like disclosures are already pretty bad.
But they're actually worse than that.
But they're actually way worse. Like if I, not knowing any of this, not knowing the like 99% and more figure, even just seeing that income disclosure, I would be like not wanting to join the company because a lot of them, it's like nearly like 90% of people are making like no money each month. Mm-hmm. Like that would already make me not want to join, but it's actually much, much worse than that. Oh, and this is kind of going back, I guess, to the whole politics thing, but something I wrote down is that in the House of Representatives, there's a direct selling caucus and it has 41 members, 18 which are Democrats, which I thought was really, really interesting just because
like close to an even split.
It's close to an even split. And like when we think about MLMs and politicians, we usually think about Republicans, but really it's like it's on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's important. That I think there's a lot of politician apologism going on. And this is what I talked about in my, Trump is a cult leader video, which is that I think a lot of people are afraid to criticize their leaders, even if it's not like Trump is a pretty blatantly obvious cult leader, like it's pretty clear, but not like, even if someone like Joe Biden, who I don't think is a cult leader, he doesn't have the personality. I don't think people are devoted to his personality or him as a person in that way. But even someone like him, who is not a cult leader, people will be apologistic of the things that he does that are not acceptable, that are things that Trump also did, that are things that you should criticize. And it's like, you can vote for someone and still criticize them. And that's why I think there's a big problem with like, people assume like, oh, the people who are letting the MLMs happen, that's the people on the other side that are doing that. We need to take them down. And it's like you were saying, like Kamala Harris let them get away with this kind of thing. And so Obama appointed an FTC chairman who then later went on to be defending Herbalife. And it's like the FTC, like we talk about wanting the FTC to shut down MLMs. The FTC is enabling MLMs in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's something, because like I've seen, and this isn't to like, I don't know, dig at any specific anti-MLM YouTuber, but I have seen where people are talking about like the FTC is on our side, the FTC is on our side. They are not on our side. Pretty much since the whole Amway case, the FTC has not been on our side. They've pretty much actively avoided going after MLM companies, and they've only gone after the ones that they have because they want to look like they're going after pyramid schemes. But that's just to look like they're doing something, but they've never really gone after any of the large pyramid schemes other than Amway, which was like a failed court case, and then Herbalife in 2016, which all that happened with the Herbalife thing was basically they had to pay a fine but didn't admit to any wrongdoing at all. So it's like the FTC is not, they're not on our side.
And I will apologize to everyone. I haven't really talked that deep about the FTC in previous videos, but I think I have made the mistake in the past of thinking the FTC was on our side. It was only very recently, this book was very eye-opening in a lot of ways, but on top of that, other things I've read, other things I've seen over the past couple months, I've been starting to realize the FTC is really not on our side with this. They are really enabling this to happen. And I didn't realize that.
Same with me. I thought they were more on our side than they actually were when I first started my channel. And now I'm realizing, no, that's not really the case. Yeah,
so guys, I would like to issue an apology, especially because I think there were times in earlier videos where because I don't talk about the FTC that much, but I think I might have implied in a previous video that I thought the FTC endorsed John M. Taylor's research when in reality they didn't endorse or not endorse it. They just didn't really interact. Like, he posted it on their website, but they didn't really say anything about it. But I had thought they endorsed it, but I think that's a misconception a lot of people have. So but I mean, his research is still factually true, and in fact, the FTC endorsing it doesn't mean anything because the FTC has been enabling Amway and these companies for a long time. So another sign that our community is very receptive to growth and change is that we're here admitting we were wrong for thinking that the FTC was anti-MLM in the past when they are very much not.
Yeah, and I think that FTC sends a mixed message because even on their website they say, well, be careful when it comes to MLMs because some of them are actually illegal pyramid schemes, but there are legitimate MLMs.
Yeah.
And they make it so it's hard for the average person to determine which company would be a legal one and which would be an illegal one, because they say well, if it's recruitment driven, then that means it is a pyramid scheme. But it's but isn't that applicable to all MLMs? All MLMs are recruitment driven, so I think they send conflicted messages.
Yeah, if they weren't recruitment driven, it would just be a regular commission sales job.
Yeah.
There would be no multi-levels. There would be there's the level of there might be a manager and you, but you would have a territory. You wouldn't, the key is you wouldn't pay to join, you would have a territory, and you would not be incentivized to recruit other people. I mean, maybe you're incentivized with a bonus, but you would never be incentivized to recruit someone for your same territory. You would be incentivized to recruit for a territory that hadn't been tapped yet. It's completely different. There are commission-based sales jobs, but they do not function in the same way as an MLM does. And I think a lot of people might think that's, especially because MLM companies like to call themselves direct sales, and the Direct Selling Association enables this.
Yeah. Direct selling is a legitimate business. That's where it's just you. There's no multi-level and you're getting commission based off of what you sell. That is legitimate. But multi-level marketing is not direct sales. Isn't
this
different.
correct me if I'm wrong about this, but wasn't that so Advocare was fined. The FTC did fine Advocare. So that was what gave me hope in the first place that the FTC was on our side when they gave Advocare that huge fine for being a pyramid scheme. But then Advocare got rid of the entire MLM model and just went to pure direct sales. And it was pretty amazing. If I have the Advocare story wrong, someone correct me because it was a long time ago. But I remember at that time when that happened, a ton of Advocare representatives were on social media saying things like, now I've lost my entire downline, my whole family's going to suffer. And it's but you can still sell the products. So you're basically, if this is devastating your family that much, you have pretty much admitted that selling the product was not profitable for you in the first place. Other people selling the concept of other people selling the product on their behalf, which is like 5 levels, that's what you were making money off of. So it's like, I think that was pretty clear, like, oh, so it really was a pyramid scheme the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you want to claim that MLM is legitimate, then people need to be actually making money from selling the product. But people are not making money that way. They're making money through recruiting people and making money off of their purchases. A point that some MLMers make is that, like, well, yeah, you have to buy in to be in an MLM, but that's the same as if you were to go work for like a fast food chain and you have to buy your uniform. And I'm like, I have a problem with that too, though. I don't think that people should have
That's
to do
the thing.
that.
It's like, you shouldn't have to do that either. Like, both, like, 2 things can be wrong at once.
Yeah. But at least with a fast food chain, you're making like a, at least minimum wage, which I also have a problem with too. But like, you're at least making minimum wage. So like, it's still not the same, but like, yeah, I have a problem with people having to pay for their own uniform to work somewhere. That doesn't make sense to me.
I would love to see the anti-MLM community get more involved in the movements for workers' rights in general, on top of like shutting down MLMs. Because there's obviously it's important to focus, but I think there's a lot of people in MLMs who will say things like, your job, you have to buy your uniform, your job, you only make minimum wage. And it's like, we can justify that all we want, but that's not good either.
Yeah,
I think it would go a long way to be like, hey, yeah, you know what? My job sucks too. Let's band together and take down the entire system, which is a lot harder to do. It's easier said than done, but I think that I think a lot of people sometimes lose sight of the fact that multiple things can be terrible at the same time. And I know that sounds very obvious when you say it.
Things are not like black and white. There's a lot of gray.
Exactly.
And like, something that I think about a lot is, obviously I wish that I could wake up tomorrow and MLM companies wouldn't exist at all, that they would be banned completely. But, I also have to think about what would that actually entail if tomorrow I woke up and they were all banned. What would that do to the U.S. economy just because of how much MLMs are entangled with it? Because the MLM industry is Utah's second largest economy. Like, that's the second largest economy for them. So, like, what would that mean if MLMs were banned? What would that mean for Utah? Like, suddenly they're, all this money that they've been making that's been supporting their economy is all gone. And like, I don't know, I'm not an economist, so I'm just kind of like thinking out loud here, but
yeah, I'm not either. And it's like, the goal is that we want these companies to all be gone, but that's not the only thing we want. Like, there's other things involved. There has to be other change. There has to be other changes too. And that's why I remember somebody coming into one of my streams talking about how, like, as a socialist, they didn't always identify with the anti-MLM community because they identified with the position of being against multi-level marketing companies. However, they thought that sometimes there was too much focus on, like, because it is factually incorrect when an MLMer says your job is a pyramid scheme too. Like, that's just not true.
Yeah.
So, but I think that leads to, like, taking that position of this is a pyramid scheme and this isn't. People tend to equate it to this is bad and this is good, when in reality both things might be bad.
Yeah.
So I think I understood the person's perspective from saying, like, it leads to a lot of people justifying minimum wage work. It leads to a lot of people justifying exploitative labor practices just because they're salaried or just because they're not part of the pyramid scheme world. Like, jobs that aren't MLMs could be terrible as well.
Yeah, I think that that's like a very fair criticism. And I actually think the same thing. And learning more and more about the MLM industry has actually, I wouldn't say that I'm like anti-capitalist or something, but the more I've learned about it, the more I'm like, there needs to be a lot of regulations on capitalism. Like, mixed economy is the way to go, in my opinion. Exactly. But I'm still learning a lot about this. So.
I am too. Again, I'm not an economic expert, and my opinion on economics has changed a lot. Like, I talk sometimes about how I was a teenage edgelord. Coming soon, I'm going to review the Ben Shapiro book I read in high school. But I was a very edgy teenager, and during that time, I was like a hardcore capitalist. I was like, capitalism is the greatest thing in the world. I even had a button on my backpack that said, I heart capitalism. Like,
oh, wow.
That's like the cringiest thing, right? Like, that's like, if Tumblr had existed when I was in middle school and someone found that, like, that's that level of like, oh my God. But yeah, I think people probably thought I had it ironically because I was also very ironic humor. And I also had it like half ironically because I also thought I heart capitalism was a very silly thing to put on a button. Especially because, like, the guy who handed it to me was, like, the head of, like, the student capitalist club or something. And he was like, we're handing out these I Heart Capitalism buttons. Ironically, they're free. And I was like, if you were a true capitalist, you would know that nothing's really free. And he was like, okay, I guess. Here's your button.
That's hilarious. I mean, okay, so for at least that you had like a position in high school. In high school, I was very much just like, I didn't care and I didn't want to like research into these things at all. So
I think for me, because it came from a perspective of like, you guys, as everyone knows, I'm a small business owner and I've always been very invested in the small business world. And I've been a person who's been very into becoming an entrepreneur for my entire life. So for me, it's like, I always hated the idea of governments regulating specifically small businesses, of governments taking too much from a small business, especially because like I inherently don't trust the government. And I think that I'm always going to be that like conspiracy theory kind of person. I think that there's too much wasteful spending, and we can go on and on about that, about the wars and how I'm a very anti-war person, but I think that's pretty clear. But I think there's just a lot of stuff like that it's like, it makes me upset to see small businesses paying so many fees and taxes when there's also so much waste in the government and so many small businesses end up failing. So I think that's what kept me in the capitalist mindset for a while. But then when you turn it around, it's like that also leads there to be this big corporation takeover, which I am not in favor of. I am very against that. So I would say like there are parts of me that is very anti-capitalist because I think that this system as a whole has, you know, the Classically Abby video I recently posted, I talked about how when Abby's complaining that it's like because of feminists, women are afraid to stay home with the kids. I'm like, no, it's because of capitalism that women are afraid to stay home with the kids. Because if they go on maternity leave and lose a huge chunk of money, like it's like the whole thing where there's no regulations on any of that. And that's what's keeping women from having the free choice to do whatever they choose. And so I was talking about that, and it's like, to an extent, I have a lot of problems with the capitalist system. I think what you're saying about like a mixed economy. Someone the other day told me that they identified as a leftist libertarian, and I was like, maybe that. I wouldn't call myself that because I don't like political labels at all. I think it's important. You have to be objective about everything. But I think that's probably the closest thing to a political label I've ever identified with. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like I kind of avoid taking political labels just because I don't want to be defined by everything that goes along with that label, because I think that things aren't as black and white as that. I think every individual has like different opinions on things. And so I don't want to like, I've always been someone that like, I don't like associating with a group. So yeah, I've always been so individualistic in that way.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of movements that people consider, like when I say I don't believe in like political labels, I think there's a lot of social movements that people co-opt as political movements, where I guess they're political in the sense that people want, you know, legal changes and things like that, which is fine. Like I identify as a feminist. I would say I care about anti-racism. I am an LGBT community supporter. I would, what's the word for activist? The verb for activist. I had activate, but that's not right. You don't activate.
Activist.
Advocate. There it is.
Advocate. Oh, okay.
I would advocate. I advocate for like transgender rights and things like that. Like those things matter to me, but I don't consider those things political because that's like, I don't think humans' lives are political. I think, but at the same time, like, to an extent, everything's political because we all have to follow laws and we all have to pay taxes. And it's just, it's this difficult system with no way out. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Life sucks.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I just like labels do scare me. Like, I use the anti-MLM label, and that's a label that I am like okay using because I think it's effective. But I also, like, that being said, I don't agree with every single anti-MLMer out there. I also use like the atheist label because I think it's useful, but I actually was very resistant of using that label for a very long time because there was like certain things I didn't want to be associated with. So, like, I don't know. I say that I don't like labels, but then I also do use labels. So I don't know where I stand with that completely.
Yeah, I have a mixed relationship with it too. Like, and what I'm comfortable with the anti-MLM label is the fact that we can disagree with each other on multiple things, but still advocate for the same cause. Yeah,
and like we've even all talked about that. About how all of us take different approaches to things. And some of us are more entertainment versus others are more like fact-based, and like how that's all okay. We can all take different approaches. And at the end of the day, our goal is still the same.
Yeah, and that's why I like that. I feel like sometimes that's why I don't take political labels, because I feel like it veers into cult territory too quickly. Like, I've known too many people who talk about how who care about like party loyalty. I've heard like just people in my life say like, oh, I'm loyal to the DNC, or I'm a loyal Republican or loyal Democrat. Like, why be loyal to any of, like, these people are here to serve you. They should be loyal to you. You don't owe them loyalty. This is such an important book, and I cannot recommend it enough. I want to have more discussions on this book. Like, I want to host a big discussion with a ton of people.
Yeah, I want to like reread this whole thing again.
Yes, same.
Like, there's so much that it's a lot of information for me to remember, to be honest. So I'm gonna need to reread it.
Like, I'm just like, this book, I guess, was $20. I think that's what it says on the back. I don't know if that's what it was on Amazon too, but like, I am just shocked that I could get this much information for $20. Like, everyone out here paying for a business guru course, you can learn. This book is the most information I've ever seen in one place in my life, and it is $20. So you're going to learn a lot more from this than from Grant Cardone's webinar. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought. Don't forget to check out the links in my description below, because this video was brought to you by my Patreon supporters. They are wonderful people, and my Patreon supporters who contribute $5 a month or more all have their own links to their own channels or websites or stores or social media pages linked in the description below, and you will definitely want to check them out because a lot of them are small business owners as well. Don't forget to look at my own small business, Forever Home Friends, which produces books and plushies based on real rescue dogs, and my other books, which are all linked in the description below, including Savvy Business Owner, which has some anti-MLM chapters in it. Not as much of in-depth research as this one does, because this is more about my own journey as a business owner, but still, if you want to check it out, it's there. I will see you guys again on Monday morning for some more of the Business Guru Morning Show and for a brand new video, but in the meantime, don't forget to support small businesses and have a great weekend. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.